All right, today we're going to talk about something called the law of cosines. We're still solving these non-right triangles, so no Pythagorean theorem or SOHCAHTOA. The law of cosines, there are three different types. A squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times the cosine of a. Or I can switch all those letters two different ways. Notice that the side and the angle are on opposite sides of the equal sign. The other two sides make up the inner pieces. And my hint here, always start by solving for the largest angle if you're given side, side, side. It helps us avoid that ambiguous case in the law of sines. So we're going to solve this triangle. I notice that I'm missing side C, but I have angle C and the other two sides. I would use c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab times the cosine of c. Plug in everything I know. A is 11, b is 5, angle C is 20 degrees. This problem is nice. All I do is plug it in my calculator. Oops. All right, I get c squared is about 42.634, but we have to square root. So c is 6.529. Now here's the nice thing about the law of sine, or the law of cosines. You only ever have to use it once. Now we'll switch to the law of sines. So I say, all right, the sine of angle A over side A is equal to the sine of angle B over side B is equal to the sine of angle C over side C. Now behind this box, you can't see it, but there's a hint. And this hint says, when you switch to law of sines, find the smaller angle first. If you don't follow that tip, you could end up with an ambiguous case situation. And the law of cosines doesn't have two possible triangles. But the law of sines could give you that wrong one. So let's find the smaller side, or a smaller angle. Smaller angles across from the smaller side, so that would be B. Our anchor is our C's. So let's cross multiply 6.529 times the sine of angle B equals 5 times the sine of 20 divided by 6.529. And the sine of B equals 0.262. But to get angle B, remember we do sine inverse of that number. So that means angle B is 15.184 degrees. Now that I have that, I can also find angle A very quickly by just subtracting from 180. 180 minus 20 minus 15.184 degrees gives me 144.816 degrees. Now the reason for my hint over here, if you don't do that, if I solve for angle first, or angle A first, I get .186 degrees. Now it's a bit different. So don't do that. Always find the smaller angle when you switch to law of sines. All right, this time we have a triangle in which we're given side, side, side. The hint here was always find the biggest angle first. So the biggest side is across from angle A, which means we're going to find angle A first. So we're going to use the law of sines, or the law of cosines version that has my A's on the ends. Plug in everything I know. Side A is 9. Side B is 7. Side C is 5. And now I start multiplying. 9 squared is 81. 7 squared is 49. 5 squared is 25. 2 times 7 times 5 is 70. Times the cosine of A. I can add my 49 and 25 together. 74 minus 70 cosine of A. Please, 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 please never try to subtract that. 74 minus 70 times the cosine of A. We don't know what 70 times the cosine of A is because we don't know what the cosine of A is yet. So I can't combine these two. It's like taking a 3 minus 4x. Can't do that. We have to subtract the 74 over, which gives me 7 equals negative 70 times the cosine of A. Divide by negative 70. We get negative 0.1 equals the cosine of A. And we solve for angle A using the inverse cosine. Now the nice thing about inverse cosine is that we won't have to worry about the ambiguous case. It'll give us that obtuse angle right off the bat. Oops. Angle A is 95.739 degrees. No question about it, that's the answer. Now you have two options. You could do all that work again to find angle B or angle C, or you can switch over to law of sines, which is what I like to do. Sine of angle A over side A equals sine of B over side B equals sine of C over side C. And remember my tip that we should go for the smaller angle when we switch to law of sines. So I want to find angle C. So I'm going to leave out my B's. And then I'm going to cross multiply. Divide by 9. I get 0.553. So angle C will be the inverse sine of that. All right, I'll put my answer here. Angle C is about 33.557 degrees. And then we can quickly find angle B by subtracting those two angles from 180. And now I have solved my triangle. All right, I'm again given the three sides of my triangle. I want to find the three angles. I like to draw myself a picture. Some people don't. That's up to you. All right, in law of cosines, always try to find the biggest angle first if you're given side, 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 which means I want to start with angle B. So that means B squared, so 19 squared, equals A squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C times the cosine of angle B. Remember side B, cosine B, like a sandwich. Let's multiply some stuff out. 19 squared is 361. 8 squared is 64. 14 squared is 196. And 2 times 8 times 14 is 224 times the cosine of B. Add these two together. Oh my. Sorry, I'm hitting the wrong buttons. There we go. 260. Remember that you absolutely cannot subtract these two. Instead, subtract that 260 over. I get 101 equals negative 224 times the cosine of B. Divide by negative 224. I get approximately negative 0.451. And so, angle B is the cosine inverse of negative 0.451. So angle B is about 116.801 degrees. All right, there's part one. Now we can switch over to the law of sines. Set up my law of sines. Sine of A over 8 equals sine of B, which is now 116.801 over 19, equals the sine of C over 14. The hint here, remember, is to find the smaller angle first. So I'm going to find angle A. Cross multiply here. I get 19 times the sine of A equals 8 times the sine of 116.801. Divide by 19. So the sine of A is about 0.376, and I find angle A using the sine inverse of that. So angle A is about 22.075 degrees. And then I can also get angle C quickly by subtracting from 180. Which is 41.124 degrees. In law of cosines, if you follow those tips, you never have to worry about an ambiguous case. All right, this one we're given a little different information. Let's draw a picture. All right, if you are given side angle side in a triangle, you need to start by finding that third side. In this case, I'm trying to find side A. To find side A, I use the law of sines rule that has A's on the ends. So A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C times the cosine of A. This one is nice. I love these because I can just type all this in. Please make sure if you're just typing it in, you also get that cosine multiplied on the end before you hit enter. A squared is about 760.881. Square root both sides. A is 27.584. All right. Now I can switch over to law of sines. Sine of angle A over side A. Sine of B over side B equals sine of C over side C. Now we want to find the smaller angle next, which means I need to find angle B. So I'll cross multiply 27.584 times the sine of B equals 22 times the sine of 52. Divide by 27.584. And the sine of angle B is approximately 0.628. And to get angle B, we just do an inverse sine of that value. So angle B is 38.939 degrees. And we quickly find angle C by subtracting from 180. Which is 89.061 degrees. All right. Let's try another. This one is 3 sides again. Draw myself a triangle. Side A, B, and C. Now my suggestion is find the biggest angle first in this scenario. That biggest angle is angle C. So we want to use the version of the law of cosines with C's on the ends. So we take C squared equals A squared, 24.6, plus B squared minus 2 times A times B times the cosine of C. Now these are the nasty ones where you have to do some work, some algebra. Square my numbers, I get 1122.25, 605.16, 262.44, 797.04. Okay, now remember I can add these two numbers together. Giving me 867.6 minus 797.04 cosine of C. I'm going to subtract that 867 over. $254.65 equals negative 797.04 cosine of C. Divide by negative 797.04. Negative 0.319 is equal to the cosine of C. So angle C is the cosine inverse of negative 0.319, which is approximately 108.632 degrees. Now I got two other angles to find. I would switch over to law of sines. Sine of angle A over side A equals the sine of angle B over side B equals the sine of angle C, which I now know, over side C. It's always good practice to solve for the smaller angle at this point, which would be angle B. So I will cross multiply 33.5 times the sine of angle B equals 16.2 times the sine of 108.632 divided by 33.5. The sine of angle B is about 0.458, which means we'll find angle B using the sine inverse of 0.458, which means we'll put our answer here. Angle B is 27.273 degrees. And to get angle A, I will just subtract from 180. .095 degrees. All right, and one more. I'm giving you the three sides. At least I think it's one more. Yeah. I'm giving you the three sides. So again, I always draw myself a triangle to help me visualize it. I'm going to find angle A first because side A is the biggest. So I start with side A, 28 squared equals side B squared plus C squared minus 2 times B times C times the cosine of angle A. You might start to get better at this as you go, but I'm going to square everything. I'm going to multiply these. I'll add my numbers together. I will subtract the 914 to the other side. I'll divide by negative 850. So now the cosine of angle A is about 0.153. So So to get angle A, I will do cosine inverse of that value. So angle A is approximately 81.203 degrees. Now remember, you can do all that work to find the next angle, or you can switch over to law of sines, which is what I'll do. Sine of angle A over side A equals the sine of angle B over side B, which equals the sine of angle C over side C. Find the smaller angle, which would be B in this case. Cross multiply. 28 times the sine of angle B equals 17 times the sine of 81.203 degrees. Divide by 28. And the sine of angle B is about 0.60000. So angle B will be the inverse sine of 0.6. So I'll put my answer over here. Angle B is about 36.87 degrees. Then I get angle C by just subtracting from 180. .927 degrees. And there we go. You will now practice a little bit on your worksheet.